An SABC News presentation.
A very good evening to you. A warm welcome to Interface here on SABC3. My name is Thembi Samachele. Well, if you have ever felt or are feeling aggrieved by SARS, you now have someone that you can take your complaints to, the tax Ombud. And he's none other than retired High Court Judge Bernard Ngoepe. The judge says his biggest challenge is to create confidence in the newly established office so that the public can feel that they have someone to help them with their grievances against SARS. Well, let's chat to Judge Bernard Ngoepe this evening here on Interface. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome, sir.
Good evening to you and to your viewers.
So the establishment of your office, the Office of the Tax Ombud, is that an indictment in some way on SARS to say, you know, you're not running as well as you should be, this is why we need to have somebody that the public can complain to?
It's not necessarily an indictment. I think we must remember that tax collection over centuries has always been a very unpopular exercise. And that's the nature of it. But I think that however efficient or good SARS may want to be, there must always be room for improvement. And that creates space. It creates space for tax ombudsperson to come in and assist and help SARS do its work even better.
So what kind of complaints would you be dealing with here?
It's quite a variety of complaints, and I think we're restricted in terms of the Act. For example, we deal only with issues relating to service matters, procedural, and administrative matters.
So if I feel that SARS is taking too much tax from me, I feel that I should actually be paying like 10% tax and they think that I should be at 30%. Is that something we can bring to your office to discuss?
It is not exactly what you can bring to our office because we don't deal with disputes around liability and how much or how less you owe or you don't owe. We deal, broadly speaking, with the manner in which you are being treated by SARS. Not so much whether you owe or you don't owe. That is a different direction altogether, which in the end may go to the courts.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, let's get this one out of the way, Judge. The fiscus is already fairly strained. You know, the very taxpayers that we're talking about here are paying for a whole lot and they are feeling overburdened. Is there a necessity for us to have yet another government body that is going to further put pressure on that fiscus?
In the form of what?
In the form of this, in this office. I'm assuming that this office will be paid for by the taxpayer.
Absolutely, yes. Unfortunately, to get good things, you've got to pay for them. And I believe that in the end, as to whether or not the office has been worth the while is for the people to tell. But I can tell you, judging from the response you are getting from the people, it seems to me that the establishment of this office is long overdue. Should have been done maybe years and years ago.
So you've already started operating in this office. What kind of cases are you seeing coming through, and what kind of volumes are you seeing in those cases? I
think we've now gotten more than 100 cases that came in, quite a variety of them. But one must also remember that, in fact, when I say 100, I think I'm understating because
it's
about 70-something in a month. But of course, some of them are misdirected in the sense that they fall outside the mandate of the office. They shouldn't have come to us. But nevertheless, you've got to read it first before you can respond to that person. So it's quite a variety of them, of cases coming in.
And I know you said, you know, it's more administrative. It's about how you are treated by SARS. Some practicalities here, Judge. What sort of things could we be looking at?
For example, if you get to a SARS counter and nobody attends to you, or they keep you waiting for 2 hours while they're having tea and they don't attend to you, that's poor service. And you'll be entitled to come and complain that I've been there, I spent 2 hours, been going there every day, and I'm cut off from the queue every time. I'm just not getting attention. That's a very serious matter. That's poor service that we can query. Also, you've had instances in which people have been wrongly assessed, in the sense that documentation that should have been taken into account has been left out of account. And the person comes and says, hey, I gave them these documents. They never really looked at them. You know, that kind of thing.
And
Yes.
documents that get lost in the system.
Correct, yes.
Yeah.
And people waiting for months without getting any response. And the next thing they get, boom, is a demand to pay a certain amount of money. And they say, wait, but I did query this and I submitted my documentation. I've never had any response from these people. That kind of thing.
Now, the fact that both SARS and the Office of the Tax Ombud would report to the Finance Minister, is that correct? You would both be reporting to the Treasury. Wouldn't that create some kind of tension? Because I'm assuming you would have to be nice to each other by virtue of the fact that you are reporting to the same entity. So how hard can you really be on SARS is the question.
I don't think that would be a problem. Let me emphasize at the outset that we view this office as being completely independent.
Okay.
And for that matter, even independent of the minister. Because though we report to the minister must take that report and place it before Parliament. So the minister can't just take the report that comes from this office and put it under the desk.
Okay.
It has got to be placed before representative people, that is Parliament. And of course, when we do submit report to the Commissioner from time to time, but the context
This is
must
the
be
SARS Commissioner.
to SARS Commissioner,
Okay.
yes. But the context must be understood. We don't do that in the form of accounting to the SARS Commissioner. We give the Commissioner that kind of report so that he or she can have a look at it and go to his people and say, hey, what am I hearing from the Office of the Tax Ombud? There are too many complaints about this, there are too many complaints about that, so that he can shake up his system and know precisely what problems are there. That is the context in which it is being presented, not as a way of being accountable to the Commissioner.
So there's no chance of victimization here, where I bring a complaint that is fairly small to the Tax Ombud, and because I've done that, SARS then uses whatever report they get from your office to further victimize me, and I find myself being, you know, between a rock and a hard place.
They'll probably be committing yet another misconduct if they victimize you.
Which I will
And then
bring
you
back
can-
to your office.
Yes.
Okay.
And somewhere along the line, somebody would have to take action against that. And the final responsibility will be the Commissioner. What does he do with this many complaints coming in about the SARS office?
Okay. Well, we're going to take a short break, and I'm really interested to find out if you've had any experiences with SARS that you'd like to share with us, good or bad, and if you think the establishment of the Office of the Tax Ombud is really a good one. Do give us your thoughts, our Facebook page, Interface on SABC3, or you can find me on Twitter. It's @Tembisa. We're back after this. Welcome back. You're watching Interface, and we are taking your thoughts on our Facebook page. It's Interface on SABC3, or on Twitter @Tembisa. We're having a chat with the Tax Ombud. He is retired Judge Bernard Ngoepe, and we're talking about how you can complain to his office if you have had any unpleasant experiences with SARS. Now, Judge, what is the procedure? So here I go. I'm disgruntled in some way, and it's within the parameters that we spoke about earlier. What is my first port of call? What do I do?
Well, you could come personally to our offices, or you can contact our office to ask them to send you, in one way or another, a complaint form which we have designed, which you complete. It's not complicated. We have tried to make it as easy as possible.
Because that's part of the problem, all of that red tape and all of these forms that you would need to fill in.
We have really simplified it, if not oversimplified it. And then you just put in the nature of your complaint, your contact details, and whatever documentation that you need to attach. Or you can contact us by email as well, lodge it by email as well.
And then what happens?
Oh, and then we have got people receiving that particular complaint. They process it. The first thing they would do would be to try and find out whether it is the kind of complaint that falls within our mandate. If it doesn't fall within our mandate, we'll try. We won't just say, well, get lost. We'll try and we'll tell you that it does not fall within our mandate, and then we'll also try as far as possible to guide you as to where you should take your complaint to, as to who you should approach. And for those that are within our mandate, we validate them, as we say, we look at them, and then if there are any further information you need from you, we'll get it. But broadly speaking, we'll consider that complaint, and if need be, contact SARS for their inputs, and then try to resolve that particular complaint.
So there isn't like a hearing of sorts where I'm sitting here and there's maybe the commissioner staring me down and saying, tell us what you said we did wrong.
No,
it's not that kind of scenario.
No, we are in between the two of you.
Yes, but I'm saying it's not a scenario where you would need to bring us into one room. It's just done by paperwork.
By paperwork.
Okay.
That's right, yes.
And what powers do you have? Because that's part of the concern that a lot of people would have about, you know, the various ombuds. That once I've brought my complaint to you, and you have found that, you know, I was in the right and SARS was in the wrong, what can you do about it?
We can do no more than make recommendations. And I would like to see, though, SARS being the commissioner or the minister ignoring a recommendation, which would, of course, be contained in our report
that you submit
to the minister and to Parliament. So some people might say, well, because you are limited only to making recommendations, that would not be effective. Let's wait and see. I doubt whether any responsible person, such as the commissioner or any senior person within SARS for that matter, or anybody within SARS, can simply willy-nilly ignore a recommendation that comes from the OTO's office.
But Judge, if you can't review the legislation or the policies that are in place that govern SARS, and in your finding, you're seeing that actually this is a legislative matter, this is a policy matter, and it should be reviewed, why shouldn't you have those powers to do that?
We cannot have the powers to review, but I'm sure if that is appropriate, we can make a remark and say, we are hamstrung in this respect. In our view, it would have been better if the situation was like this and this and this.
But shouldn't you be pushing to have that review? To be able to have those powers?
The powers to review legislation?
To deal with policy, at least, if not legislation, then policy. To be able to have a little bit more bite.
I wouldn't like to be involved in policy, because policy is politics. That's essentially what it is. And reviewing legislation entails being involved with legislative mechanisms, which is the prerogative of Parliament and the like. I think we can still make an impact without getting involved into those policies. Surely if there's a problem around SARS policy, which gives rise to problems, I'm sure we'll recognize that, and then we'll point that out to them.
Because, I mean, I'm thinking of somebody that's prepared to go to court and is saying, you know, I'm taking SARS to court, and some people perhaps have, and they're saying now there's a tax ombud in place. What's the point of me coming to this office and not going straight to court? What's the benefit?
Well, we try to resolve the problems as cost efficiently as possible and speedily. Of course, we don't take away your right to go to court if you so wish. But I would have thought that a more prudent taxpayer would rather say, well, let me try the office of the Ombudsman first before I can get into the costly business of trying to go to court, which may take long to resolve your matter. For example, we have been able to help people who had claimed some VAT payments from SARS. We have been able to help them, and they managed to get their refunds from SARS without going to court. They could have elected to go to court. God knows how long that would have taken. So really, at the end of the day, I think in some instances at least, it would be more prudent to approach the office of the Ombuds than trying to go to the court. The court route.
So the decisions that you make are not necessarily binding then?
No, they're not
anybody.
binding. No, they're not binding.
Okay. Well,
they don't even bind the taxpayer himself or herself. If she feels that...
So if you find against the taxpayer?
Yes.
It would not be binding?
No, it wouldn't be.
And that's a good thing?
I believe so.
Okay.
At some point, people must learn to accept that a recommendation properly thought out is something that you shouldn't just ignore.
It can actually still be effective?
Correct.
All right.
We don't have to take each other to court all the time.
Okay, let's get your thoughts. What do you think of that? The fact that the Office of the Tax Ombudsman can only make recommendations and none of those recommendations are binding. Do you think that'll make this office effective? Give us your thoughts. Interface on SABC3 or also on my Twitter page. It's at Tembisa Magele. Do stay with us. And we're in conversation with retired Judge Bernard Ngoepe about the establishment of the Office of the Tax Ombudsman. And one of the questions coming through for you, Judge, is if, for example, EFF leader Julius Malema felt that he was ill-treated in some way in the sequestration that SARS has implemented, could he bring that complaint to you?
You'll be welcome to do that. Remember, the issue is not who is complaining. The issue is, what is the complaint? If the nature of the complaint is such that it falls within our mandate, we'll have a look at it, irrespective of who is complaining, who is the complainant.
Yeah. If he said, look, I feel that I'm being targeted because of political issues, is that something that would be within your constraints?
We will have to look at it first. I can't prejudge now. We'll have to look at it first. The point I'm making is that that office is open to all South Africans, irrespective of who they are.
So, Judge, one of the things that we'd like to pick your brain on is the budget speech that will be tabled in Parliament tomorrow. You know, we all know that it's going to be a juggling act for the minister, but what do you think of what will go into that juggling act?
I must be careful with this question because I want people to understand that as the tax ombuds have nothing to do with SARS and the ministry in that sense. I'm totally independent. I don't peep into their things. That speech is going to come to me just as a surprise, just as it would be to everyone else. But having said that, though, my expectation is that looking back, I think the current minister is going to try to present as best as he can. And I would hope that in the end, it is a speech that will take into account the interests of everybody else and take into account the serious challenges we are faced with in this country. I don't want to refer to problems that we've been seeing at this stage and in this context, but I think we need a budget which will have to address all these many challenges that we have.
Now, one of the other things that I was reading about is that the UNISA Graduate School of Business Leadership launched their first ever academic scholarship in honor of you. That means that they are recognizing your leadership status. And I'd love to get your thoughts on what you think of the state of our leadership in the country, not just in politics, but also in business, in the legal fraternity, in academia, all over.
Well, first, let's contextualize that award. You will remember that I think I'm serving my third 5-year term as the Chancellor of the University. And I think they did that because of me having served for so many years as the Chancellor of the University, not because...
Which is great leadership, Judge. Let's not be modest about it. This is great leadership, so... Yes.
I think that we have got... in this country, we have been very blessed indeed. I think we've got very many people capable of leading this country properly. It's only for us to identify them and cast that responsibility on them. Remember, there are people who are very capable, but who would not go about making themselves available. And sometimes wrong people go about making themselves available. But I think we have in this country people who are quite capable of giving good leadership to this country in all walks of life. and in all professions.
Now, also, you were appointed to chair the panel of adjudicators of the Press Council.
Yes.
So what do you think of the state of our media in South Africa?
I think it's an exciting appointment. It has opened my eyes and to things that I did not know before. But I think with regards to the state of the media, I think the level is quite high. And I think that there's a lot of investigative journalism taking place in this country, which is good. We need that kind of thing at this stage, when we're in the process of building a nation, when we're in the process of developing our democracy and strengthening it. But at the same time, I think that here and there you find some lapses and excesses which need to be talked about. And we need to sit down and recognize them and make sure that we don't indulge in that kind of excesses.
And for example, you know, there are those that will say, you call it investigative journalism, they call it a witch hunt, you know?
Yes.
That's not really investigative journalism. So your thoughts on that?
I think that is the way it should be. Let people say, this is good investigative journalism. Let others, probably on the other side, say, this is a witch hunt.
Especially the ones being investigated.
Yes. That's a good exercise, because then we engage with each other, we talk with each other, we're trying to define the limits and concretize the objectives and values that we're striving for. As long as we don't physically assault each other, it's fine with me.
And, you know, the one thing you mentioned earlier was that, you know, you've learned a lot, you've discovered a lot of things in this position. But what's been the most surprising thing for you to discover?
That there are people, members of the public, how alert they are about the media and what the media publishes. I don't think that personally, as an ordinary person, I would have picked up some of the issues which people find are contestable, which they pick up from the newspapers. I'm just amazed. Sometimes you receive a lot of complaints about a particular issue, and you say, oh, when did these people pick this up? What impact does this make on people? So that is the kind of realization that I've come to. Maybe it's because in my previous life, I was obsessed with my work as a judge, and I never looked through the window to see what was happening outside. But now I'm seeing that now.
And if you look through the window these days, especially as we lead up to the elections, you'll see quite a few service delivery protests, and that's becoming a big problem in our country. Solutions, Judge?
I don't know.
How would
Be careful not to draw me into politics, because I'm not a politician. But I think that...
That's not politics, though. It's how to improve the state of our country.
I think when you see that kind of thing, all that is required is for us to take them seriously, find out what are the reasons and causes for that, and deal with that. That's the way life is.
All right. You know, politics is everybody's business. I would argue that all of us need to be putting our heads together to try and find the solutions of improving our country. And just getting back to your role then as the Tax Ombud, we want to give those numbers. They are on your screen if you would like to contact the judge's office to try and have your matter resolved. And what are the time frames that people can anticipate? If they bring a complaint to you, how much time would it take to actually resolve it?
We have tried to determine some turnaround frameworks for ourselves. I think maybe it's about 14 days or so, or even less. You'll hear from us. In 7 days, we'll acknowledge receipt of your complaint and tell you that we are looking into it. And then we can tell you whatever documentation, if any, is needed, and so forth and so on. But our turnaround periods are pretty short. 7 days to acknowledge, 14 days to have contacted SARS and come back to you within, I'm not so sure now, yeah, as quickly as possible.
And of course, it would depend on the complexity of each case.
It does, of course, it does.
All right. Well, good luck in your role and congratulations on it. And thank you so much for coming through to talk to us on
Thank you.
Interface about it.
I do need that luck. Thanks.
Yes, we'll be watching. We'll be watching to see how things pan out in your office.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
that was retired Judge Bernard Ngoepe, who is also the newly appointed tax ombudsman. If you have thoughts on what he needs to do to improve his office or to make sure that it is effective, do give us your thoughts and we will forward them to him. And our address or how you can contact us is Interface on SABC3. That's how you find us on Facebook. And also on Twitter, it's @Thembisa Magele. For now, good night.